Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. I think we've been through my background really. So I've stayed at UCL essentially since I came to do my master's there in 2012, and I think probably the most pivotal part of my career to date was the joint funded Pauline Ashley Fellowship by RNID, the Royal National Institute for Deaf People, and the Dunhill Medical Trust. So it's a genuine privilege to be here at this event today. When I was asked to give this talk, I balked slightly at the title because it had the word success in it, and so these are what I consider to be my main successes in terms of winning funding so far. So I had my MRC funded PhD studentship, my fellowship in 2019. I was really excited that results from that fellowship actually informed a major application for an NIHR project grant, which was successful, which is great. But I just really want to put this in the context of all of the things that I have, and I think this is all of the things, but my memory has sort of selectively repressed various of them. But I thought this would be quite cathartic going back and finding it was actually just trauma, really. So please do take everything I say with a pinch of salt, because there are going to be many more successful people than me. The other reason that I wasn't sure about whether to give this talk or not was initially because I thought I just do my own little area of research, and I don't do much that's collaborative or multidisciplinary. And then this tool that UCL have added to their profiles pages randomly, it shows me at the centre of it, and then different coloured dots that represent different academics, and the different colours represent different departments. And actually, my background is in psychology, and I've actually been fortunate enough to work with speech and language therapy, clinical colleagues, neurology, audiologists, and to work with people with expertise in social sciences, computer sciences, and neuroimaging as well. And I will try to give a few case studies of some of the projects that I've been fortunate enough to be involved with a bit later. So why should we collaborate as early career researchers? Well, we can't do everything ourselves, and this allows us to answer questions and solve problems that we just would not be able to do by ourselves. It broadens horizons, it exposes us to new collaborators, new perspectives, new techniques. I think evidence of multidisciplinary research is increasingly important for things like promotion, so certainly this is mentioned in the UCL promotion criteria. And they're often actually small internal funding calls themed around multidisciplinary research, which is a really great way to sort of show evidence of securing funding and to test the water with a new collaborator before committing to something more major. And funders, external funders, tend to really like evidence of genuinely multidisciplinary research, and particularly for things like fellowship applications where broadening your skill set is really important. We've heard already today that is absolutely true of Dunhill, and this is something that they really embrace, and it's actually one of the Dunhill Medical Trust's key principles, one of their 5 key principles. They say many of the problems we are trying to understand and address require examination from a variety of perspectives and the input of multiple stakeholders if they are to work and lead to practical benefit. Good and effective collaboration does not come without challenges, but is essential if multi-dimensional problems are to be solved. So I would absolutely agree that good and effective collaboration does not come without challenges. And I've got 3 sort of case studies of my own experience. The first of these was, again, quite traumatic, but I'm sharing it in a spirit of openness. I haven't been that open because I've had to anonymise certain elements of it, just in case I get, sued at some point. But so this was me as a PhD student. You can see I don't have a beard at this point, so I still cared about how I looked and things like that. So as a PhD student, I had this bright idea that we were collecting all this data from the patients we work with dementia, and this was sort of ancillary to the main work that I was interested in, which was the relationship between hearing loss and dementia. And so I had this idea. I wondered, could we do something with this extra data? Is there something that we can use here to maybe stratify the different dementia diagnoses that we're working with? So I went to Google and I found an anonymous investigator who wasn't anonymous. I mean, they're on Google. I have anonymised them today. And they look like an expert in this area. They were based at UCL, which is where I am. And so I asked my supervisor if I could get in touch with them. I went a bit far with the anonymisation. I didn't need to anonymise my supervisor. But so when I typed in supervisor in like Bing images or whatever, and this picture of Chris Hemsworth came up. So that represents my supervisor, but I must make clear I'm not supervised by Chris Hemsworth. But he was broadly supportive of this idea. He said I could go ahead and have a see if this person wanted to have a chat. And I got in touch with them. We had a meeting. I explained to them about the kinds of data that we had. They had an idea. They had done something similar in a different disease group previously, and they were keen to apply the analysis techniques that they had developed for another project. So I set up what we call a data transfer agreement with help from the data governance manager in our centre. I sent the psychology samples over, and after a month or so, I got an email from the experts, and they had written a single author paper. Thank you, yeah. It's bad. Acknowledging me, but not my supervisor or anyone else who was involved in collecting the data or the work, and wanted to let me know that they were going to submit this to a conference and to a journal. And so at this point I sort of went cap in hand to my supervisor, asked if this was okay. I was still quite junior at this time. Obviously it's not okay. He interceded, and that's essentially the end of my involvement in this story, because I never I understand it was quite acrimonious, and it just the project never went anywhere beyond that point. So not a happy tale. So reflecting on this experience for this talk today, I think one of the things that I learned was it's really important to try to clarify and manage expectations from the start. And I could have, if I'd done that, if I'd been very clear about, I would expect maybe to write this up and to be the first author with you as joint senior author as my supervisor. And if they had said no, I could have walked away at that point and saved everybody some time. It would have also been helpful to have an open dialogue, because in my area, I have sort of an average of, about 10 co-authors in each of my papers. In their area, it's usually just them or them and another person. So we have a very different way of doing things in the fields. And actually, again, perhaps if we'd had that dialogue earlier, some of this could have been avoided. But I did do some things right as well. So I had followed all the protocols in our centre in terms of the data transfer agreement. And as soon as things went wrong, I did go and speak to my supervisor, and ultimately it was not my proudest moment and not the most successful collaboration, but it could have been even worse, I'm sure, somehow. So turning to something that makes me less depressed, this is my second case study. So we run support groups for people affected by a rare group of language-led dementias known as primary progressive aphasia. And the people I was meeting at these support group meetings kept saying that the things they struggled with struggled with most was having a roadmap for the disease, sort of what will happen to them or their loved one next, when will it happen, what care might they need. And they were saying that they have all these questions, but actually the neurologist, whilst being incredibly helpful, just weren't really able to answer those types of questions. So again, I spoke to my supervisor. He was really supportive about this project. He said this was something as a clinical neurologist he was very interested in, and he told me to go ahead with it. So I devised a survey with some patients and caregivers, and collaborated with some neurologists and some speech language therapists to make sure that the results would be useful clinically. We worked with social scientists so that we could collect qualitative data alongside the quantitative data. And so that I would have a plan to analyse those. And I got in touch with some speech language therapists I'd met at a conference in Australia a few years previously, and asked if they would be interested in collaborating, and they were very, very keen to be involved as well. So we sent the surveys out to all of our patients and carers across the two countries, and we collected data from a couple of hundred people affected by this disease, which is really, really great, because this is the larger studies of its kind. In terms of the analysis, really fortunate to collaborate with some qualitative research experts and some computer scientists as well to help with some aspects of it. And the first results have recently been published. You can see just by the photo, it took about 5 years, but we got there in the end. And one of the things I'm proud of with this work is that it really was a multidisciplinary effort. And in blue here are the psychologists, speech language therapists or speech pathologists, computer scientists, social scientists, clinical psychologists, neurologists, data governance experts, and dementia support workers. And this study which was born out of conversations that we were having at support groups, and I think led by the patients and carers we were working with, would not have been possible without all of this effort, all of this collaboration and effort, to be fair. So what did I learn from this one? So I was really delighted to be exposed to some new techniques and perspectives. So, for instance, qualitative framework analysis. I think I did manage to clarify expectations a little bit better at the start of the project, but I can still do better. Could have still done better, and I could still do better with that today. And I think the importance of regular communication was really underlined to me, and I did communicate with people regularly, but it tended to be with just the individual groups, and what would have been really nice would have been to have regular project meetings. But that was difficult for this project because it wasn't really funded by a central project grant or anything, so it was difficult to insist on that. And so moving on to my third and final case study. So this, I was giving a talk actually about my Dunhill and RNID fellowship. And after that talk, I was contacted by some researchers, some engineers at Imperial College London. And you can see by the fact I haven't anonymised them, this was a happy ending. They were acoustical engineers, and they were interested in collaborating on a project looking at designing smart hearing aids for people with dementia. And this was really relevant to my work, so I set up a meeting with their group and ours. So I gave a brief presentation about my research on hearing and dementia. Emily from their group gave a brief presentation on their work. We all tried to use lay-friendly language, as I have no engineering expertise and they didn't have any dementia expertise. We tried to make it a sort of a safe space and opportunity for everyone to ask questions, to talk about our wish list for the collaboration. We ultimately applied for a small grant together, and that was funded. And this is work that's now being driven in our lab by Ben Nevitt, who's a PhD student. And he's now using the hearing test that they have designed in our participants with dementia. And our hope is that the results from this study will inform algorithms for smart hearing aids for people living with dementia in the future. So this was it is a nice collaboration that's working well. And I think the things I learned here is it's really important to try to be confident to ask questions. So nobody was expecting me to know everything about acoustical engineering. I'm not an engineer. And also not to feel too impostery about what I'm bringing to the table there. So they had approached me because I had given a talk. They had this amazing engineering expertise, but they really needed the knowledge about dementia and the knowledge about hearing in dementia that we had in our group. And the third thing I learned is, and this is something I try to do, is to say yes to talk invitations, because you never know what might come out of it. So I thought I've got a couple of slides just to think about some more practical things for us to be aware of. So in terms of how you set up a collaboration, you might have someone come to you, that's great. But if you've got an idea, then I think the first thing to do is to do your research. So what has already been done, why, what happened, and who could help you to take your idea forward. I think the next step is to try to make contact, and probably via email in the first case, or perhaps asking a supervisor or mentor or senior academic to make the introduction for you, and to gauge interest from the other side. And I think try to be clear about what you think the benefits are for science, for patients, for you, for your potential collaborators, but I wouldn't overstate these at this point. I think great to have an initial meeting to share ideas and to agree common goals. As I've said, I think it's really important that this is a safe space, so nobody there knows everything, or they wouldn't need to be there. So try not to worry about looking stupid. And I think really important to have measurable outcomes, to agree action points or targets and deadlines for meeting these. So that might be applying for a small pot of funding or writing an opinion piece together, something like that. And in terms of us as early career researchers, specifically, this first point, the what's in it for me, I think feels a bit cynical, but I think that's really important for us to bear in mind. So, as everyone in this room is aware, we're in quite precarious positions in terms of our funding, and funders like Dunhill are doing incredible things to support us. I think we're sort of all aware that not all of us are going to make it, right through to the top of academia, and that's fine. From my perspective, I would just like to know that I had the best chance, and I gave it the best shot that I had. And so I think with things like collaborations, they can be very helpful for securing promotions, for securing future funding, and also really fundamentally important reason to do this, to do a collaboration, is because you're passionate about it and because you actively want to do it, and that's a great reason. In my experience, my limited experience, if you're altruistic, if you're kind and help someone else, they will usually, not always, want to help you, but also see the first point again. I think try to clarify expectations around authorship as soon as is practical, in writing if you can. I'm still not good at that, and I could be a lot better. And I think if you can, try to find an external mentor who can advise you and really help you with some of the difficult situations, and might make introductions for you as well. And just the point I made earlier about the internal funding calls, often really prioritising collaborative grants. So I just had a quick look when I was making these slides at some of the institutions that we have represented here today, and without fail, every single one I looked at did have some sort of internal call which encouraged people to collaborate across departments. So, and I was a recipient of one of the UCL ones a few years ago, which was really helpful for another collaboration that I'm involved in. So I think that would be a really good place to start if you're interested in pursuing some of these ideas. And I'll leave it there, but that's my email address if people have questions after the event. And thank you very much to Dunhill for funding my first fellowship and for the invitation to speak today.
So thank you to Chris for starting off this conversation essentially about working with other people. And I guess some of you might already be, as part of your PhDs, doing that. And most of you will go on to work with many different kinds of people. And our project, funded by Dunhill, is looking at working with communities. So this is a university community-university partnership called My Home, My Life. That's our logo. We've designed it as a team, so we're quite proud of it. Okay, before I start off this video, a formal introduction, a very short introduction to the project team, the purpose of the collaboration, and who we are. Just one or two things to keep in mind. How are we approaching this? We are approaching this through an approach called co-production. And two, we have not worked together before, especially with our community partners, so this is a new relationship. So hopefully this will work.
As you may know, in the UK, people of Bangladeshi origin aged 50 years and over, from being in Bangla, are amongst one of the ethnic groups that is most likely to be housing and health deprived. But their own voices on why housing and health inequalities endure and how these are maintained and widened are missing.
Amar, Bari, Amar, Jibon, My Home, My Life will hear from the older Bangladeshi community living in mainstream housing in East London about their living arrangements, experiences of home, housing and neighbourhoods, and aspirations regarding where and how they live.
Issues of affordability, inter and multi-generational living, household adaptations, overcrowding, accessibility, and housing with care will be central to this study. We will listen to what people have to say.
Over the next 3 years, a community-university partnership between Bangla Housing Association, the Open University, or OU for short, and the Housing Learning and Improvement Network, or Housing LIN for short, will work with long-established Bangla communities in East London.
Collaborate.
Co-produce.
Engage and include.
Involve and influence.
Our overall ethos and methodology involves collaborative ways of working that foregrounds experiential and lived knowledge for social change. We want this research to remain relevant, accessible, and reach out to the very communities that are impacted. We're therefore involving diverse stakeholders from the very beginning.
Co-production is at the heart of this project. Our Bangla Research Advisory Group, comprising men and women recruited from the local communities, are coming together to co-produce and to advise and comment throughout the progress of the research. Bangla Housing Association is leading on the development of this group with support from the Open University. The group will engage flexibly and comfortably to contribute to different aspects and stages of the research.
Data collection will be via 80 in-depth interviews with older Bangladeshi men and women and 10 interviews with families living multi-generationally. These interviews will be conducted by 6 multilingual community interviewers recruited in partnership with the Bangla Housing Association and Bangla Advisory Research Group and trained, facilitated and supported by the OU team.
From the outset, we are also co-producing with practitioners working in the local community. We're setting up a professional advisory group comprising local service providers, practitioners and policymakers to advise on local and national issues relevant to the research, to actively consider what practitioners and policymakers can do to address needs of older people from minority communities. We aim to bring members of the Bangla and professional advisory groups together to meaningfully engage, inform and influence political debate about housing policy locally, London-wide via Greater London Authority and nationally.
Engage with the Bangladeshi province and their families to learn about the housing-related needs and aspirations.
A coming together of ideas and possibilities that are co-produced.
Positive outcomes for probing and their families and communities.
Co-create robust living knowledge with community members to influence change.
Ensure that the needs and aspirations of the Bangla community are fully recognised in local housing strategies and growth plans.
Empower a deprived and marginalised community to raise their concerns.
Build common ground and nurture the environment for sustainable and meaningful dialogue, learning, and relationships between all stakeholders. Thank you.
So that is the core project team. And what we were talking about there was this. So co-production is a way of coming together to work in equal partnership and trying as far as possible for equal benefit. Now, when you use such an approach, what I've understood in very simple language is that the process is as important as the outcome. In fact, the process is which is going to lead you into your outcomes, your impacts, your legacies, whatever you call them. And we are working to these values, and you can see some of these values are what, Dunhill also talks about. So I won't read them out, but these are the values you have to not only work to, you have to live them every day when you are working with other people. It's a commitment. And how are we working together? So you've been introduced to the core team. We have been working since 2021, the core team, even before the project was funded. When the call came out, we cold-called, as Chris said, if you reach out to people, we cold-called, emailed community partners. And just to introduce you, Bashir is here. He's a community partner. He's there at the back, sitting here. He'll join you for the Q&A. Do question him. And Caroline is there, one of our academic partners. We wrote to quite a few people, and he came back. Although the call was, it was themed around a particular topic, there were synergies. We all thought that we had to work on this particular area. So we had sort of a shared vision around it. And then we worked for a year before we were thankfully successfully funded for the project. So well begun is half done. It's something we talk from experience, because we have sat through that 1 year trying to work out the details or the design of the project, and we can start to see some of the benefits of actually doing that. And all of these bubbles that you see here are actually, all of these bubbles are what we call the engaged research design that the team has done. We've thought through it. We're going to appoint somebody. How are we going to involve the community? In what different ways? And we have different groups. There's a research advisory group, 8 people who come together and meet us every 3 months. They are from the community, different age groups, living in the different fieldwork boroughs that we are working in East London. They do all the sort of what you know as PPI work with us. They review our documents, they comment, they tear them apart, do all of that. We also have community co-researchers. We are going to a community where language, we are powerless. I do not speak Bengali and Sylheti. Most of the academic partners don't. Mahera does, Bashir does. So we are lost. When you feel powerless as an academic, this is the time when you do. So we thought we have to get in community co-researchers. Someone will go and talk to them. And when we thought about it, Bashir, I remember having this conversation with our partners, and we said, won't they speak English? And Bashir said they'll be more comfortable in their native languages. And then we didn't need one type of language, because communities are not homogeneous. And you just learn it. So there's Sylheti, there's Bengali, there are at least 2 languages you have to have. And what we are now seeing is, when we are screening people for interviews, that some of them don't have a second language. They just say Sylheti as the main, Sylheti as the second. And imagine if we hadn't done that, we would not have reached the population that we've claimed that we would go to. So we'd not be represented at all. And we are quite conscious that this is not a straight line. There's no straight path through this research. We are also going to convene a professional advisory group, but that's the well begun is half done. It takes time. But you need that time to build that relationship with your partners, whether they are other academics or anybody, and give you time to build that research relationship, that trust, that knowledge about each other. Creating a flat space. Now we meet different groups in different ways. The core team usually meets on Zoom or MS Teams online. We meet our research advisory group in person. Community co-researchers, initially we met them in person, now we meet them on Zoom or Teams. But you have to create that flat space. So I remember Chris said the safe space to ask questions, so I call it a flat space, because you don't want any power dynamics there. So you have to let people, you have to bring in those values that we saw earlier into that space. Do you give enough space to people to speak? Do you listen to people? And then you should, of course, haggle and bargain and do all of that, but do you do it constructively? Now, this kind of research, you can only plan so much. So you can only see so much in the ahead, and then everything you plan may not go to the plan. So the 2 things we're learning. We never had this group here, people who would transcribe the interviews. We had thought we would get one person and just do it. Now we're finding that there is not going to be one person. There are in-depth interviews. We need a whole team. So we're sort of growing that team now with ourselves. And in fact, bringing them, doing a little bit of give and take. They bring their local knowledge, and we tell them, research from research. these are the kind of things we need some consistency. We need to understand all the nuances, how do you write it out and all of that. And then we are meeting loads of new people along the way, and they come through all these networks that all the people in the team bring, including these, everybody. So everybody talks about the research to somebody else, and it leads to new paths. So we are now applying for studentships. We may not get them, but these are conversations with the local communities that lead us on to newer things. So this networks is a very interesting and very important part of this work. And I'll leave Mahera to do the next few bits. So that was what we had designed, and this is what is a reflection from the team or the teams that we have on how it's going at the moment. Please go. Oh, well, good.
Maybe if I can just ask you when to change the slides.
Yeah, sure. Look at
that.
So, now.
So we've looked at how we can present this coherently so that it makes sense to you listening. So we looked at a couple of ways that there's been value to the project, value in different ways. The first has been of working collaboratively. So what value has it brought to the particular members that are involved? So in terms of team members, we've recently had a sort of a reflection session online where we've talked about the project and tried to engage with the questions that Daniel has sent us, but we've turned them into our own questions. And some of the value to the team has been around skills, enhancing skills, but also about learning new ways of working. So really, if you look at some of these quotes, these are from the reflection session that we had, the idea that everybody has an input and feel that not just from the academic side where we tick off boxes and saying so-and-so has an input, so-and-so has contributed this, but actually people themselves feeling that they've had an input. And where Bashir is also saying that co-researchers themselves, so when we actually engage the co-researchers, we had this idea that they will go out and interview and come back, just sort of minions out there conducting interviews and coming back. But actually we've created a WhatsApp group for them. And one of our team members was saying that she loves reading the messages on there because you can see the trail of thought, but also how they start supporting each other. This was supposed to be just to say that I'm going into the interview now, I'm coming out. But it's become more than that now. They're sort of asking each other, what are you doing, how are you doing, are you taking the samosas they're giving you? So it's become a real space where it's a shared space from them. And we've mentioned brag, so this reflection was a while back within the first year of starting the project. And like has been mentioned, that they felt that actually research can't be done with one entity. It's important for people to be involved and to give their view and perspective. And brag has really embraced that. So Manik mentioned 8. Actually, we went on to include 2 more so that we have 10 members of different age groups and gender and background as well, so that they really do contribute. So that's our Bangla research group. And if we can go to the next slide. So this is the value to the project. I'm going to let you read the quotes while I just take one example of how having different groups have been really helpful. So I'm going to focus on brag. So we needed to advertise for the elders that we wanted to, 50 plus community that we wanted to interview. So we sort of took a mock-up of the leaflet, which is on your left, and we thought somehow that it was going to be okay. And we went into the brag meeting. So we have the 3 monthly meeting. We went in, we showed them that, and we were really taken back by their response. A couple of people were really upset, and they said, well, this is not academic. You're going into the community. So they said that this is too much, too academic, too much information there. And on that day, interestingly, we had somebody who was live illustrating the meeting as well. So we had the live illustrator in the room who's capturing our conversation. So from there, we went to here on the right. And so the BRAG members contributed that it should be speech bubbles, it should be more conversational, more approachable. And the picture of the lady and the gentleman there came from the illustrator. So she came and said, how about you use parts of what I've illustrated to go onto the leaflet? So the gentleman here had a hat on to start with. And then the BRAG group came back and said, no, I think you should remove the hat so it's more inclusive of the Bangladeshi community, because not everybody's a Muslim. It indicates that you're going into the Muslim Bangladeshi community. So again, there was a robust discussion on that leaflet, and thankfully we ended up with the one on the right. The reason I'm mentioning this is because often me going through my PhD and really learning from the academics, there often seems to be a thought that we know kind of what to do. And when you're thrown, it's difficult to know how to come back and how to listen and really manage that relationship. And so the next slide really is about the challenges. So one of the challenges has been that working with uncertainty and not knowing how things will be taken and perceived, particularly by our different groups. So again, with the community researchers, they've come back and challenged some of the way we've used some of the resources that we've developed. So one of our ideas was that we have for the qualitative questionnaire, would use a wheel sort of capturing the main topics that we would discuss. And actually they came back and said no, at the training they said no, this isn't probably going to work. So they adapted it to how they wanted to work, whereas we thought, wow, that was a brilliant idea. But actually it didn't seem like, it wasn't in this case. But they adapted to use it how they felt fit, which again was really eye-opening for us. And I particularly like, my PhD was on puzzles, so I like that second quote, intergenerational, and you know, sort of how teams come together to make meaning of the whole. And each piece is like a jigsaw puzzle that each contributes in a particular way and has its own value to it. So again, overcoming those challenges has really been important to work as a team and to really listen to each other. So which leads to getting the communication right. So we asked our community co-researchers the same questions that we reflected on, and one researcher came back and said that they didn't feel that the communication was effective. A lot of things were being repeated, so we were doing one-to-ones with them, but at the same time we were asking them to come to group discussions as well, and they felt that a lot of it was being repetitive. So again, and short notice as well, so we've had to take that on board. And the communication has been quite interesting. I'll just give a small example. So me and another colleague, Sheila, we've been going around Tower Hamlets and Newham, particularly Tower Hamlets, quite a bit as one of our research sites. And I had a separate conversation with Manik, saying that I spoke to somebody in the community how to access one of the sheltered homes that's in Tower Hamlets. And this person advised me that I should take a white face along, because that would give it more importance. Just as, you know, importance in the setting. Interestingly, we came to a meeting, we were having a meeting, and Sheila had gone there herself initially. She came to the meeting and said, Mahera, I think it might be really important for you to come along, because I think I'd get better access. We'd have better access to the centre, because when I entered, it was mostly, obviously, Bangladeshi community there. And then a following conversation, Bashir was in the meeting, and Sheila and I think we both kind of thought that actually it'd be really good if Bashir went along. Because when we both visited, we were both women, the centre was mainly used by the male elders in the community, and we both thought, actually, no, maybe Bashir should come along. And so this kind of access, the gatekeepers, thinking about how we communicate is really important. It's evolving, and there's a lot of learning that's happening, particularly in the group when we meet on a weekly basis, has been really interesting. And also, with all due respect to Bashir, who's becoming more and more involved in all the meetings that's happening. So again, contribution and local knowledge and information has been really key to getting the communication right. Yep, next one. So research projects are time intensive, we all know. Bids are for so long. And we're very conscious of the role Manik has on our team. But one of the things that we've had to work with is respecting the pace of the research with those who are involved. So not really expecting things to happen as they are in how it was written. So we thought we'd have the PAG, professional advisory group, done and dusted really quickly, and BRAG would take a long time. But actually it's been the other way around. The Bangladeshi advisory group has been easy to form, but the professional advisory group is taking its time. But actually, the organic way how it's happening is much better for the project because we're getting to know the community much better.
I'll interject to say that, when you're working with the external, not academia, within academia, where you have those norms, isn't it? We have developed those social norms of when we work, how we work. It's all, you don't need to talk about it. But here, common sense should have prevailed, isn't it? Why do you even think it'll work to your academic clock? Because people are doing this outside of their other jobs. You see, so it is never going to happen in the 9-to-5 cycle. And that's something very important to take on board if you want to go ahead and do this kind of thing. Sorry.
So being considerate of time. So thank you for that. So, so really being respectful of the pace, I think is really important, and those who are involved. So part of our labour of love, I guess, has been being respectful of the time that we invest and being honouring it. And that's been quite humbling for a lot of us who are involved as well. And I think we've got one more.
Yeah.
So continuing the challenges, decentering of academic knowledge. So this is a personal experience of mine, where in previous academic involvement, I have struggled with the role of academics, maybe because I come from an ethnic minority, where we are all, often the researched. So this position that academics hold of coming in, doing the research, then coming out and then presenting it somewhere else, to other academics. Here we've been challenged in that, in a way, where we've been juxtaposed in a situation where we've had to be accountable as well for what we are trying to do and how we are trying to churn it or process it. So decentering has really helped us to appreciate that we have to let go to a certain extent and let those who are experts in their field be able to contribute the way they find it useful and meaningful. And us having to actually sit and listen and actively listen to be able to make meaning of it in terms of the project. So decentralizing or decentering academic knowledge has been really a key one, I guess, for us as a challenge.
Yeah, we've embraced it. That's
we've
the spirit,
it.
Yes. I think that's the thing you do. How do you deal with it? You embrace it.
Yes.
And it's good, isn't it? You talked about not being the expert on anything. I think Chris talked about it. And that's really a relief. That, you have given the ownership of something to somebody else and they will pick it up brilliantly, actually. So just summing it up very briefly, what makes for successful collaborative working? Chris, we didn't even bat an eyelid on the successful. We feel we're doing so well. Anyway, we'll be getting there. Open to new ways of working. And, it's very experimental at times. Always a very knowing in action sort of thing. Trial and error. You have to think what is happening now. How should we shift it? How should we change it? So you have to be adaptable. How the project moves. It doesn't move synchronously in all the areas, but you have to constantly adapt your methods of getting from A to B. You will get there, but you have to be really open to new ways of working also, as in, we talked about the time. When are your meetings going to be? All of those things. So being reflexive and willing to move across roles, identities, and boundaries, very, very important. If you can't do it, don't do this. I mean, you don't have to do co-produced work for everything. You have to do it thoughtfully. But it's knowing when you are supposed to keep your mouth shut, very simply put, and where you should intervene. And that is hard. That is very hard. It seems easy to say. You have to know when to have that confidence in others to pick things up for you and take them forward. Starting early is a must. If you are in new relationships with new partners, plenty of time to build it up, because that will take you through. The project will change over its life course. New things happen, always happen on projects, but what this gives you is that everybody is on the same page. You are not trying to convince each other that we need X or we need Y. You've surpassed it. You all know this is a common challenge. This is my tip. Working with emeritus academics, use that. They are good mentors. If they like the project that you're working on, they always, I think, would like to work on things which they haven't done before, are more innovative for them. Grab them with both hands and bring them into your projects. So both Sheila and Caroline are emeritus, and I've worked with them. And they have a calming influence. As they say, we don't panic in front of you. We may panic later, but that's enough for me. Being creative to make meaningful connections. So this is not only about writing papers. When you have this kind of a varied team, how do you actively acknowledge and value everybody's contributions? How do you showcase your teams? The video you saw earlier was precisely because of that, and I always make a joke. I say we all wanted the TV time, but you can't do it in a real presentation, which doesn't give enough chance. So be creative with media, be creative with, so for us the WhatsApp groups work a lot better for many of our groups, so different kinds of things, bring them in. And making space for reflection across the different groups involved. You think you're doing everything to the best of your intentions, and you are, but it may not be perceived as such. So talk through those things again and again. Willingness to let go and listen. This is very important. This is your personal working on yourself all the time. And acknowledging and valuing what people bring to the table. And definitely looking out for each other. So we have this WhatsApp group for community co-researchers. They are currently in the field doing interviews, mostly in the evenings. There are men and women going into people's homes. So we've told them when they go in, they should just pop a message, I'm in such and such's house. And when they come out, they should tell us, I miss it, sometimes Mahera misses it, but somebody is picking it up. And that's it. That's it. So it creates goodwill, and it'll go a long way in doing a lot of good things. So I think that's where we are. I'm sure we've taken up more time than
Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions? Okay, over here.
Thank you so much. Nice presentations. My questions are for you, Chris. I have to say I like your storytelling. In the first case study, could you throw some light on the procedure of the data transfer agreement?
Yes, thank you. So that is it's essentially a contract that is in place for external collaborations from our department, because we work with clinical data.
Did you draft that contract?
I didn't know. It was in place already. I'm sure I can get a copy if you would like to see a blank copy.
My second question is about the second case study. So you worked with people from different backgrounds. What kind of difficulties have you had, and how did you solve them, especially in dealing with people with computer science backgrounds? Because I'm a tech guy, I'm a computer science, I have a computer science.
Yeah. So I think it's a really good question, and as I prefaced at the start, not brilliant at any of this. I think I had learned by that point from my experience with the first time. So, for instance, with the computer scientists who are amazing, and we have an amazing relationship with, we were able to I wrote up the clinical paper, and they wrote up a methods paper about the I don't even whatever they did, and that works really well. Whereas before I might have that would have worried me, and so I guess that sort of better understanding of the differences between the disciplines was really helpful there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we have a question over here.
Thank you. I'll stand up because I can't see you. I work in the Blizzard Institute in Whitechapel in East London, and my research is on ageing and immunity. And despite my best efforts, most of my donors are white middle-class people, and I was wondering, what should I be doing to try and engage the local communities in Tower Hamlets to make my research more inclusive?
It's ready.
You need to speak to me.
And he's serious.
Thank you. A couple more questions, maybe one.
You spoke wonderfully about kind of decentering that academic knowledge, which is obviously an emerging and important field in global health in particular. I wonder, could you comment on how you balance that with your own academic needs? You know, you need to professionally develop yourself in order to apply for more funding, etc. How do you balance that?
I think one of the things we have spoken about in our team meeting is that maybe the outcomes may not look like the ones we expected. And that's I guess, a bonus in terms of looking at how, part of letting go. But also it's enriched by the people that are contributing to it, that decentering. And we often find that we're stuck in a way of thinking which isn't always helpful as well. So the decentering actually helps us to become more open-minded in looking at things. But that also helps to actually see the outcome that you might want, but it's more enriched process. So like Manik was saying, the process is sometimes maybe more important than the outcome, and a lot of papers can come out of the process, the methodology of doing a research project. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but sort of looking at meeting our needs is to then come to the meetings that we have and thinking about how do we then bring that into our knowledge framework and see how that can be given meaning to, in a way, and see where that can lead to. I don't know if Manik can add to that.
So just to add to that, that's a good question, and it will come up for Mahera and myself especially, because there is a ref framework. You will always be asked, what have you done? And many of these outputs will not fall within that framework. So one thing which I think councils are moving towards is kind of sort of learning to work to seeing different kind of outcomes. So we hope that happens during our lifetime, one thing. But there are also, I think when I said being creative, these are the things we're working on. There are many things we can write about in terms of papers, but it'll have to be written with different people, and we are working on that. You know, how do we get at least the ones who are interested? So you can't blanket, say, impose on everybody who's working with us, come and write, because you have to do it. But if you are interested, it's a flexible thing, and I hope some are. And we will write at least the bits where they are very actively in it, and it should be like that. So we are still to think about those, or we are thinking about those kind of creative ways of doing it, but doing it fairly within the and getting the papers. We'll tell them this helps us as well. I think that's where you have to manage those expectations the university has of you, and the responsibilities you have for bringing in communities actually into the project. So I hope that's. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think we had a question at the back, but while the microphone makes it there, I was going to say, Chris, so how have you tended to approach collaborations for fellowship applications? So, you know, those applications often centred on the person.
Yes, thank you. So for me, as I mentioned, I've stayed at UCL and actually stayed with the same research group right through from when I started my PhD. So I think a challenge for me is showing how I'm individuating from that group and from that supervisor. And in my experience, sort of finding collaborators in outside of his sphere, so that I can truly say this is something that I have initiated, this is something that I am taking my research into a completely new direction. That is not something that he has that he has done before. Has been. I think has been helpful. I mean, you see my list of rejections, but I think in general, I think it's received well. I tend to get good feedback on that aspect of my applications.
Yeah, that's great. And I have to say, when we have personal fellowship applications and interviews, it's very much how the candidate themselves have helped inform the research and the research question, and that often comes up. So it matches what you've said. Question at the back.
Hi, Bashir, this question is probably for you. A lot of the time, for community organisations, when they're reached out to by academics, it often feels like, a subject that's being, a species that's being subject to tests, if that, and that sense of involvement or co-involvement isn't always there. So I was just really intrigued as to what made this proposal attractive to you when you heard about it. What made you actually go, okay, from a community organisation perspective, we would like to be involved?
Yeah, thank you for that. The reason I got involved in this is because Manik, Sheila, and Caroline contacted me. I work for Bangla Housing Association. They somehow found out we've been doing a lot of work during the COVID pandemic. We've done a lot of work for the community during the pandemic. And through that, we have built a lot of contacts with the community. And when Manik and her team contacted us, and I thought this is the right time, this is the right thing to do, because after the COVID, I felt that there is a lot of unfinished work, and working for the Bangladeshi elders, finding out their housing and health needs is sort of, in my opinion, is a carry on from the COVID work. And that, when we've had our first meetings, and Manik was saying earlier that we've had a year to speak to each other, and we built that kind of trust within us. And I have found, when you talk to academics, you sometimes, as a lay person, you feel that you cannot communicate with them because they're talking in their language. But I found Manik and Sheila and Mahera, everybody's they're down to earth. And we, Bangla Housing, I've got another colleague working with us, we are learning from them a lot. And I'm sure they are learning from our experience as well. So, this collaboration is really working, as far as I'm concerned, because of the fact that everybody is open-minded, as Manik was saying earlier. We're all open-minded. We all sort of are ready to learn from each other. There are challenges, we understand, but then we have to overcome those challenges. We have to have that mindset, that sort of feeling towards for each other, that we have something to achieve. There's a goal that we have in our mind, and we have to get there. And by working together, collaboratively, we can achieve that. Thank you. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you very much. One last question.
I was wondering, if you had to redo your projects, and this question goes to all of you, what kind of agreements would you keep in place to balance the expectations and power dynamics with your community and stakeholders and your supervisors?
I mean, I don't know, this is my personal experience. I wouldn't change a thing. I would learn from what we're doing at the moment because it's a first. But I think for me, any other future collaboration this is going to be the mark. Maybe because we are coming to it very new, we are very, very careful on how we take forward our relationship. I think all of us are. So we put in a lot of effort in that. And anything after this, we'll have to live up to that. So to answer your question, I wouldn't change much. But I think if I could redo some things, I would, this is the other thing, which there are so many tips. Budgets are very important, and the first time experience on this, and get them seen by different kinds of people within your university, especially if you're doing projects like this. You build in contingency funds. If you are putting in 20 days for somebody, put in 25 days. Because you can't value time, that's the other thing, in days or hours. Much of the work will happen outside of that. The hours Bashir is putting in, they are co-funded in the bid, so that's a great thing, and we're thankful to Dunhill for that. That they sit equally there. But I don't think funding can do justice to the kind of work that happens here. So time has to be valued differently. So I think I would add some more budget, I think.
That's across all the groups actually that we have.
Yeah.
They've all gone the extra mile. Somebody was asking a question earlier about what works, what's working. I think maybe one of the ways we know that it's working is that people are coming forward themselves to contribute. So we have a couple of the co-researchers with an expertise in the media, and they've offered to write a news piece to talk about the project. We have BRAG members coming forward to do certain things. So that just shows that people have a different kind of investment outside of the formal kind of setup that we have.
So you have to acknowledge it, I think.
Yeah.
So we do
Celebrate.
We do lots of vouchers. We don't know what else to do, but maybe you have ideas. How do you? It's a good question. How do you value people's contributions? And I think that's something to learn. It isn't always about the money, although the money helps. You just acknowledge it a little bit, in the moment.
Can I just share a personal experience? Coming into the project a year later, to a formed family. Who built trust. I think one of the things that I truly experienced was that if you look after the people, the project happens. So I think that's maybe in something in the agreement or how you work with people, is to care for the people that are there, and your outcomes will happen. And I think that's really important. That's what I felt coming into the team, that the people are really important. You invest in the people, value what they're saying and doing, and you don't have to worry about the outcomes. They'll happen. They'll happen.
Yeah, we think Caroline did say, find good collaborators, but be a good collaborator yourself.
I think that's actually an amazing place to end the panel. So please put your hands together for our panel. Thank you.